Give me this. Good afternoon, everybody. It is 2 o'clock, and in the interest of being a Friday afternoon, valuing everybody's time today, I'd like to get started. We last left off at Roman numeral number 6, which is officer wellness. But before we get onto that topic, I would like to talk about something briefly that we've already covered. And really, what I'm doing is circling back to the steering committee on a change that we're going to be making to a policy as a result of these conversations. We recognize, and this is the where the steering committee discussions and input does matter. We recognize that although embedded within our policy, the term hog tie or securing hands to legs was not allowed per our policy, but it was not explicit. So we've added what you see in the highlighted section. That's a draft that we're showing. We are going to add that to our policy so that it's very clear to officers that that is not allowed. In addition to the other restraints that are embedded within the policy. It says, at no time shall any member secure handcuffs, flex cuffs, or any other restraint used to secure the hands to any restraint used to secure the legs, and in parentheses, also known as, and in parentheses, hog tie, and in quotations, hog tie, and end parentheses, to restrain any individual. Anybody have any feedback on that change that we plan to add to our recommendations? That'll be a recommendation number 3 under the Roman numeral 1 use of force, response to resistance category.
Chief, no comments except to say thank you for for acknowledging the that discussion and the use of that terminology. And I think hopefully there are many members of the community that that recognize that too and appreciate that too.
Thank you, Jengis. Okay. Anybody else has it? If nobody else has anything else, let's jump right into number 6, which is officer wellness. We have our updated format on our report that we are now introducing. We're getting a little bit closer to being ready to hand it off to the council. So we're going to be giving it a preview right now. officer wellness is a topic that is covered under the President's 21st Century Report that was put out in 2016 under then President Obama. And it is something that we firmly believe that when we maintain officer wellness and officer mindfulness, that everything that follows should be reflective upon the community. So one of the things that we want to recommend is that as a department, we take a good close look at officer wellness and peer support. And we want to bring on some people that can assist us with really reimagining it, and with in addition to what we're already doing in the form of peer support, which is we have a group of officers who have been trained and communicated to other members of the department that if anybody's having any problems, whether it's work related or not work related, you can seek out a peer who will help guide you through the process of getting help. One of the challenges that we face is that we are there. It is still a very big hurdle for a lot of officers to go through. We feel that they're taking more time to get to that point than we would like to see. We'd like to see more normalized that an officer seeks help a lot sooner if they're going through problems. And this, I guess, the best example might be if they're having marital problems. At the beginning of that, we think it should be normalized, and they should understand that it's okay to seek help at that point because problems in your marriage may be a symptom of other things, and the sooner you start addressing it, the better. It might be a work-related issue, it might not. We don't want anything, whether it's something that happened at work or not at work, to affect the level of service that we're providing to the community. So having some professionals come in to help us with normalizing, seeking that help. And also, we want to be able to expand the wellness program that we do have at the police department. And those are listed on the old page 18. What page is this? Well, what's this? Yeah, they're listed right here on this page where you can see them, which is to consider having a wellness coordinator, somebody that works closely with our peer support team and its clinical director. And this is somebody that would work in a preventative mode more than a clinical role, just maintaining that mental health, talking to officers and how important it is to focus on mental health. These are things that are currently done at the police academy when you start, and they seem to, when all the recruits go off to the various police departments, to be forgotten about. But it's certainly something that we really do need to focus on because it's important. And then letter B in the gray box is to have some kind of a electronic peer support information board, both in the throughout the building, but whether it's next to our squad room or in our muster rooms, the gym, locker rooms. It's a messaging that we can consistently send these messages out. It would be something that the wellness coordinator would facilitate also, to continuously let officers know that their wellness is important. Wellness is a component of active bystandership for law enforcement. I just want to, before I pause to allow for feedback, just kind of connect it to active bystandership, to say that we did go over ABLE and the benefits of it during the steering committee meetings. And ABLE is something that we would like to, from a long-term perspective, implement here at the police department. ABLE to join it, while it may be free of cost to join it, there's a high demand on resources at our level in order to implement it, both from a training perspective and oversight perspective, and then the requirements to maintain the program's perspective. So that would be a structure that we would have to build up in order to succeed by bringing it on. But in the meantime, we're really focused on looking at what ABLE is and trying to replicate it at one step at a time individually. And then when we decide to adopt it, it's going to be a really quick process for us to pull it all together. So that's our goal right now. That's what we're talking that we're recommending, is that we go down that road. And I'll open it up now. Go ahead, Jenkins.
So Chief, one comment on this. So I view, and again, this is my personal view from doing some of the research after was made aware of it. I view ABLE as a critical element that answers several concerns that we've heard from the community, especially the empowerment of officers to somebody mentioned yesterday, maybe it was Michaela or someone else, about the blue wall, et cetera, right? And I think I brought up the ABLE thing there. So what does it actually take to go right into the deep end of ABLE and just do it and not have it be a quote unquote longer term thing? I mean, is there a specific resource asked that needs to be asked for there that should be forwarded to the city council?
Yeah, I'm going to ask both Lieutenant Mascheron and Sergeant Deering to assist me with answering that question. I want to say off the top of my head that two things that were brought to my attention would be, we would likely need to add additional resources in our training department to facilitate the training. But in addition to that, that may be where we would need a wellness coordinator or some coordinator of some sort to oversee the whole ABLE implementation. And Lieutenant or Sergeant, can you expand on that for me a little bit?
I can read off some of the program standards here. So I did attend the training for it back in the summertime, the online just introduction to it. But I could go over a few of the standards. There's about 9 of them in total. That one would be 4 letters of recommendation for community support. This would be from community organizations. Second kind of standard that they have is they call it meaningful training. Officers will have to receive at least 8 hours of initial training dedicated to ABLE, at least 2 hours annual refresher. A dedicated coordinator needs to be established. So you need somebody at the department level to be coordinating it and putting this all together from a training perspective and from keeping in contact with, I believe, Georgetown. Program awareness. The agency will institute an active bystanderist awareness program. The principles and benefits of peer intervention shall be promoted through regular and internal and external communications, including clear messaging from public safety executives. Fifth is accountability. Basically, strong written language needs to be integrated into our policies for anti-retaliation policy to ensure those who are intervening are not punished, targeted, or otherwise ostracized for doing so. And I can actually put in the chat as well the link to this, just so you can see it. There's about a paragraph per standard. Officer wellness is another component of it. So kind of to what Chief was just speaking about, you're going to have somebody here that's dedicated to officer wellness, whether that's a counselor or however we decide to go forward with that. Reporting is a piece of it. Just want to see really quick what that entails. I don't remember that one too well. That one's pretty extensive, so I'll leave that at that for 1 second. Measuring officers' perceptions is number 8. And the agency will basically implement pre-implementation surveys as well as post-implementation surveys and communicate that with Georgetown University. Follow through as well as another one of the standards. And that means that active bystandership program will be implemented department-wide with the full and vocal support of the agency leadership and command staff. The agency will do its best to cooperate with reasonable requests from the ABLE project to evaluate the meaningful implementation of the program by sharing policies, training curriculum, internal communications, and providing access to leadership and officers for interviews. And that would be access from Georgetown to here. Number 10, so I guess there's 10, paying it forward, it's basically our commitment to spreading the ideology of ABLE, not just within our department, but surrounding departments here in the capital region as well. And those are kind of the 10 standards that they're looking for. Each one, I said, like I was saying, is a little bit more extensive, and I'll put it in the chat right here so you can look at
it. Thank you very much, Lieutenant. And I mean, and again, I think most of my comment here is aimed at the city council members who are on here, right? I believe that we should give a strong consideration to allocating whatever resources are necessary that we would embrace and able sooner than later.
And Genghis, I agree with you, even though we're focusing in this group, in this discussion on the police department, I believe some of these things are clearly applicable in the fire department and other departments across the city. It's the wellness, it's the standards that we set, and that to make sure we're creating that level of confidence that the services we're delivering wherever it is in the city are done in a fair manner, equitable manner, that people respect the public employee that's doing it, whether it's a police officer, firefighter, code enforcement, somebody that's in our Bureau of Service. And so my view is a little bit more encompassing, but I agree with you in terms of doing these things in a quicker manner as opposed to a what may be represented here. The assumptions may be incorrect where it's not going to happen tomorrow, but we want it to happen as quick as we can.
Right. And look, and the key thing about, I mean, I'm saying stuff that I think that everyone knows, but just to quickly say it, right? The key thing here is that it links us then where, where police intercession's concerned, within the department or fire or wherever else, it links us then to a larger set of resources relative to the university, et cetera, right?
Yes.
And so we don't have to be going this one alone within just the locality of our city, right? I know that we can, or county. I'm confident that that'll work out well, but we could get a real, no pun intended here, shot in the arm of being linked to a more nationwide view of this type of activity.
I agree.
Thank you for that. Anybody else before we move on to procedural justice? Okay, procedural justice is our next topic. Now, procedural justice is something that we spent some time here at the steering committee talking about what we currently do here at the police department. We're very proud of our participation in procedural justice. Years ago under Chief Chairs, we participated in a study regarding procedural justice. We had training that was pretty in depth here at the police department regarding it. It's becoming part of our culture, so much that we have 2 master instructors here at the police department, in addition to two instructors at the police department. So we have a total of 4. We are building out our participation and our communication of procedural justice. So the recommendations are that we continue our implementation of Principles of Policing 2, which is procedural justice falls under Principles of Policing, and that we will then begin training procedural justice level 3 throughout the department. And we are going to also roll out roll call training through video training, and really with that messaging piece of this, get that messaging throughout the police department, throughout the building, where the signs and the principles of procedural justice are reinforced regularly with officers, so that there'll be more of that visual reinforcement in addition to the verbal that we currently have. This is something that we put in there as a recommendation that we're putting it in here because we're going through this process. This was going to happen anyways, so we're simply just putting it in here for documentation's sake that we are continuing to move in this direction, and any guidance given to us from the state on the level of procedural justice, we immediately embrace it and then train it. Letter C is to get more master instructors here at the police department. One of our master's instructors is pension eligible. The other one is getting very close. So that's more of a legacy thing than anything else there. Any questions on procedural justice?
And just on an unrelated topic, I sent out this draft that we're reviewing right now to everyone via email, so apologies that didn't get to you before the meeting started, but you guys should have it now in your inbox.
Thanks, Krista. Looks like you did a lot of hard work formatting, and it looks a lot nicer and presentable.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So community engagement was probably one of the more popular themes that we saw come from these conversations. The recurring theme was members in the community want to see officers more regularly. They want to get to know their officers that patrol their neighborhoods. They like to see walking beats. They like to see officers out on bicycles. That face-to-face contact, that the knowing the names of the officers, recognizing them. We want to be able to deliver that. So we have five recommendations as it relates to community engagement. I will briefly say what each of those are, and then we can talk about them. We are recommended that we put together a unit that we can expand community policing, and without having without committing to where our staffing would be. The perfect environment would be that every shift has community police officers. Recognizing that would be a huge staffing increase. What we're considering right now and recommending is that we expand to have a community policing unit that may split shifts between the day shift and the afternoon shift. Say like noon they would start and work until 8 o'clock. Typically when it's mostly daylight out, that would really be out there building up our the investment into the communities. And when I say building up the investment into the neighborhoods, I mean establishing collaboratives where members of the community become part of the solution. And we're talking everybody from city council members to leaders of community organizations to just people that live on blocks, being a part of the solution, knowing the community police officer who's there, walking the beat, knowing that there's a connection to that police officer, that if there's a problem in the neighborhood, they can let them know about it. They will then be tasked with bringing any of the problems within the police department to other departments that will have a component that's a part of this. One of those components would be that in our special investigations unit, each detective will be assigned to a neighborhood as a problem solver. So community police officers may be there to handle the one-off problem, but if they recognize that there's multiple problems, then they may contact a detective, and then they may create a case to start looking into why that problem is. That may turn into interviews, knocking on doors, treating it like a true case, trying to find out what the problem is, and then working with the city, all departments, to solve that problem. It may not just be a police department, and it might not just be the city. It might be all government and all resources, all hands on deck, social services, OGS, whoever is needed to solve those problems. And ultimately, the detective would be the case manager to circle back and make sure that the problem is solved. That's number 14, and we could talk more about that. I expect a conversation about that. Number 15 would be to recognize that the community really wants to see substations out in the neighborhood. They are expensive to have, so we can't, we're recommended that we create a substation, but we have to be realistic in that probably every neighborhood can't have one, but we should consider having one that could be a meeting point in the neighborhoods maybe that need them the most, a welcoming place, so that if anybody wants to make a report, they don't feel like they have to walk downtown to do it. It's a little bit closer. It's a little bit more of a welcoming environment. We would have possibly have our officers that are doing community policing and maybe doing community health initiatives or harm reduction stationed in that substation. It wouldn't be 24/7, but it would possibly be 12 to 14 hours of operation that's staffed. So that's a recommendation. Depending on where that substation would be, there's potential that regular conversations could be hosted. And if they're not hosted there, we are committing and recommended that we do regular conversations in each neighborhood. Currently, what we're doing is we're going to neighborhood association meetings, but our recommendation is going to be that we regularly host conversations ourselves, and we would take the point through our neighborhood engagement unit to find a space to host those conversations and then have them. I'm not worried about space. I've had enough offers out there for places that I know we could find them, and we always have our churches to go to. I know that, so I'm not worried about that. Number 17 as a recommendation is community outreach officers. This is specific training, not necessarily adding additional staff, but simply taking of the staff that we have, officers that we would either identify as being able to help be our advocate for community outreach, or get trained to be community outreach. And those would be people that could help with individuals in our community if there's a language barrier. So we're talking about having our community outreach officers be officers that either are already bilingual or willing to learn the language, be able to learn or have learned sign language, and then have specified training to be able to be available to respond to a victim of a hate crime, and maybe even to promote cultural awareness both within the community and within the department. And one of the examples I'll use is that we've been working closely with the Guyanese Community Center on learning more about their culture and their festivities that they have around weddings and funerals, and why specifically weddings where there may be loud music, but it's part of the ceremony, and that when we show up there as police officers, it's not necessarily something that we can address immediately, but we should speak to see how much longer it is, and maybe be a mediator with the community to let them know that once the ceremony's over with, the music will be done with. Lastly, number 18, and then I'm going to open up for feedback. We recognize that in order to allow our officers to do a lot of these things, we have to be doing something less ourselves. If we could drive a lot of reporting to be online, we would like to, but we recognize right now it might be a little bit difficult for members of our community to do that. So we would like to, look at closer an online reporting system where that it's possible that, and I don't want to commit to this because we would have to speak to the Director Spawn and the UCC, but if it's possible that in a similar manner of what they're doing now with individuals who call that may want mental health help, that if somebody calls, maybe a certain set of questions can be asked, and then the answers to those might drive whether they're referred to an online platform to complete a report or whether an officer would be sent. This is something that might help ease the process for a lot of individuals in our community, so they don't have to wait for a police officer. But we have to have a platform that's easily accessible and easy to maneuver through. And then also, what we would like to see is that report go immediately to our desk sergeant for review, just in case that desk sergeant reviews it and says, "Oh no, this should not have been filled out this way. We have to send an officer." And our current format doesn't allow for that. So I'll open it up for questions right now.
Chief, I have a question.
Sure.
So on this particular one, I noticed that where you talk about the community outreach and the community policing, I know there's been some conversation around community policing not really being the current best model. So I kind of wanted some feedback on that from you. And in addition to that, in terms of the cultural awareness and language barriers, I just wanted us to be mindful that there are some who immediately come to our thought when we think about this, but I want to remind folks that when we consider this, we have to consider there are so very many cultures. So we should make sure that we're considering all, not the ones who are either the most vocal or that we seem to, recognize and or as a large majority of people as like in Spanish speaking, but we have other East Indian communities, we have Muslim communities, and I know that Islam is a religion. However, you get what I mean. So I think that we need to make sure that we're being aware and mindful of all the diverse cultures that we have in our city. So, and then I have a question: is when the training happens, is again that training going to happen when new recruits come in on Zone 5? That cultural awareness, will that be something that will be included when that training is done for people before they even get to the street?
They already have cultural awareness.
Yeah,
They did academy.
at the academy, they are already providing cultural awareness training, and certainly if we build upon a model here that exceeds what they currently give, we have a close enough relationship with the academy that we would offer that feedback. I'm on the board of directors, and Sergeant Deering is also on the advisory board at the academy. So we have a lot of input at the academy. So the answer is yes, and we would be looking to actually make it better if that's possible.
Yeah, and go ahead.
I was just gonna say, to your point with not missing any members of our community and their culture, the thought would be is that we would make this this recommendation something that we would probably spin off a mini task force on, and an invitation to the community to help us build it out, because we don't know what we don't know, so we want to make sure that we cast a wide net to make sure that everything's covered.
Right. And I had to step away, so I apologize, but I just want to step back and add a couple comments to Abel. And one of them, well, actually, one's a question where Lieutenant Mastron was talking about the training. And I was just wondering if that training could be done by a civilian or if it has to be a sworn officer.
That's a good question. We probably would want to run that by Abel, by the program. That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if you know, Lieutenant.
I don't. Yeah, I mean, my exposure to ABLE was only the summer online training that was from New Orleans, and so I kind of limited exposure to it, so I wouldn't be able to answer it. But it's certainly something we could ask. I did reach out after the training to make sure that, because it looked at the end of the online component in the summer, that there was only going to be one opportunity to kind of get acknowledged by ABLE and then start with the program. And then, so I did reach out to them to just ensure that this was going to be an ongoing thing. So we do have communication with them if we need to, so we can ask that.
Okay.
And real quick on that, you have to be certified through ABLE. So you may, I don't think it certainly necessarily has to be an officer, but you have to attend one of the ABLE Train the Trainer events so that they can essentially certify you to teach it moving forward.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else with community policing questions?
So Chief, there is one. It's a general question for all of community policing. One of the things that I recall distinctly coming out, and have it in my notes coming out from the conversations, was the concept of police officers in cars versus the mix with police officers on foot. Can you comment on? And I understand that it was raised, the amount of officers, the research issues, going from one call to the next, etc. But does that figure into the plan or recommendation somewhere?
If it does, and the model that's been proposed would be that this community policing unit would be either on foot or on bike, recognizing that they may have to take a car to a certain area and get out and walk, but their primarily goal would be to be on foot or on a bicycle, and only available for calls that would occur in the zone that they represent. So currently, or in the past, we've had community police officers. Let's just say that you're the community police officer for Mount Pleasant, but if there's a domestic in Goose Hill, you got sent to it if you were the only car available. And under this model, we would want to expand those number of officers and just dedicate them to community policing while maintaining a staffing of officers to respond to calls for service. Clearly, on any major incident, they might have to be pulled, but we would really work hard to make sure that that was limited for a specific reason.
Yeah, I'd recommend, and since you articulated verbally, I'd recommend, again, since it does have a traceability back into what we heard in the conversations, you know, it may be useful to put in some language around the car versus walking versus, you know, with the full understanding of everything you said about, you know, needing to immediately respond even at some distance. So whatever I think language makes sense there. But I think we missed something from what Councilman Porterfield said. So I don't know if I'm familiar with the concept of community policing not working, or in the way it's labeled or in its definition. So can somebody articulate that a little bit better? I mean, maybe Councilwoman Porterfield, if you've got some awareness of it.
Actually, my awareness is pretty limited. I'm very familiar with community policing and the way it's set up, but as I'm sure others have gotten emails saying that the concept of community policing is something, as things happen, you know, as we move, that it's something that communities are moving away from. And unfortunately, I know that Reverend Grigsby is on here somewhere, and I think they came from him. Reverend Grigsby could maybe articulate a little bit more on that. If not, we can come back to it when I pull up the information.
Okay. It's up to the chief as to where he wants to slot the discussion in. If Reverend Grigsby is good to bring it now.
Yeah. No, if the Reverend's on, I'll stop talking if you want to chime in. But I can tell you this, that it is acknowledged that in the past, community policing was not done effectively. It wasn't done correctly. Many people mistakenly thought that broken windows theory was community policing. Having officers go around looking at broken windows, trying to fix things. Community policing really has three elements, and this is what we would be focusing on: community partnerships, problem solving, and organizational transformation. And you know, I've already mentioned that the community partnership piece, where we would really want to have each neighborhood, a partnership build within each neighborhood, and have that neighborhood really focus on helping their neighbors, using the police officers as agents to get that done. And then the police officers, the weight isn't going to be on their shoulders. They are going to help figure out who needs to be brought in to solve this problem. And it could be somebody from the city, county, or the state, maybe even the federal government, because there are resources out there. Problem solving, I kind of touched on that already, where you know we really want to dive into problems, things that are happening. I'll use Crane and Sixth as the problem solving issue. We recognize that with Chubby's, the way it was going on, and Crane and Sixth, a lot of complaints that were generated, a lot of crime that was occurring there. I got together with the sheriff's department, and we worked in conjunction with the state police, and we really put an effort into that area. And it wasn't just zero tolerance. You know, that's not community policing. The presence of the police is important, and I think that the best way to explain it, and Mary, and you'll appreciate this, is that you go in there and you weed and seed. If we go in there with enforcement, we have to go in afterwards and plant those seeds. We have to go in there and hold people accountable that are breaking laws, but then we have to stay there and go visit with the community members and empower them so that they feel comfortable to know, you can call us, we will be there, we will handle it, we will be here watching your backs. And then the piece that I really didn't mention yet is that what we did at Crane and Sixth had a really big outreach component to it. Jamal Muhammad was up there with his team providing community outreach, offering services. So, it was a global approach. It was that hub approach that we used, and that's where I see our community policing model going to.
Can I just ask one other quick thing about that? So currently, as I understand it, officers aren't necessarily assigned to certain neighborhoods on a regular basis unless that's changed. And I'm sure we've talked about this before, how having someone that you recognize and that recognizes you because you see them on a regular basis goes a long way to building relationships. So as part of the community policing model, will people be assigned to neighborhoods on a regular basis for their patrol, or will they still be moving around? And let me just say the simple thing, because it's mentioned to me time after time, that simple relationships, simply officers saying hello or smiling or waving from their car, for some people mean a lot. And I know that maybe that seems like too simple, but I've had residents say to me, like, I wave, they don't wave back, or they, that kind of thing. So I know you can't force people. However, I just want to somehow, if we, it doesn't have to be in this report, but somehow we think about how we do that in terms of really building a relationship with the community and the police department, because ultimately that's what's going to make all of this successful.
May I speak? Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I had trouble speaking before. Thank you for that lead in, Marion. I guess I want to say two things. One, about the substation recommendation. That sounds very good. Just from my own history, though, I'm glad to see it be a substation. In the past, as the chief probably is aware, there were neighborhood outreach stations, but they were not substations. So it got confusing for people as to what could be done and what couldn't be done. One of them was years ago, the old Albany Street United Methodist Church, and I think another one was in the building that Sycamore owns now on Albany Street. So I'm very glad to see it's a substation idea, and that makes a lot of sense, especially with all the cultural awareness that's being talked about. So glad to see that. In terms of community policing, that's a complicated topic, and it's not something I feel there's time to really fully discuss today. Because we don't want to go back and forth on the Finn report, as was indicated yesterday. So I think what needs to happen is to not say expand community policing at this time, but really have a later conversation about fully defining community policing, looking at the various aspects of it, evaluating various experts in the field. There's a lot of work that's been done on community policing, and I guess I would be cautious about saying expanding at this point without further definition. And I don't really want to go further, because then we'll end up in a debate.
Thank you, Reverend. And I'll say this, that I agree that a discussion about community policing should be a recommendation, and should the council agree with that and we move forward with it, we could again set up a separate mini task force to have those conversations to see what the community would want in the forms of community policing. We could bring in some experts in the field on community policing, and we could have a discussion about it and build the model. Again, what we want to be able to provide to the community is what the community wants at the end of the day.
So I don't know if because I didn't really hear anything about so how are officers assigned to communities, and is there any thought to changing so that they're in the same community on a regular basis?
They currently we recently just changed our model due to our staffing changes that happened at the beginning of the year. Prior to that, every neighborhood had a community police officer on the day shift and the afternoon shift. On the midnight shift, those officers became more of a sector police officer, where they covered 2 neighborhoods. But the reality of it is that they were only able to do community policing when there wasn't calls for service. And the calls for service right now are at such a volume level that the amount of community policing that can be done is limited. The only place where I would say the community policing is really occurring is downtown. That's because we have a foot post down there. And they had the ability to do it. One of the thoughts on should we build this model out is that, and I recognize that, we have sent officers out there, some of them right out of the academy, and said, go be a community police officer, and that we need to better prepare them by training them. One of the ways I would like to do that is to identify certain police officers within this organization that have been noted as being excellent community police officers, and potentially have them be our trainers, where they would work one-on-one with officers that are doing that job to learn how to do it, and then also bring in some outside trainers. But I truly believe that if we have a personnel within this department that are excelling at a certain thing, that we should really capitalize on that talent because they know the community. And they could hopefully help us get to where we would want to be with what we're talking about.
Chief, Will Rivas has a couple points in the chat that he wanted to bring up too.
Well, are you on? Can you talk? Can you speak? Or
I'm here. I liked something that Reverend Phil had mentioned, and he had mentioned it more than once. And I think because of the time constraints, our situation is really difficult because we're under a time crunch. But I'd be really interested in seeing how we how we put the community in a space to be able to talk to us about what community policing looks like. Right now, there's a lot of us as organizations and people in positions. We're talking about our ideologies about what community policing look like. But I'm really interested in seeing how we can creatively and in a collaborative manner come together to really create the space necessary for our community to tell us what community policing means to them. I think that's really important. I think we're definitely in a time crunch, and I'm thankful to see us, meeting and putting some sort of work together. As being in Schenectady kind of my entire life, it's promising in a sense to see so many people working together. I appreciate that. But I definitely don't want to lose sight of all the professionals in the room and us missing the community aspect.
thank you, Will. That's absolutely something that we could, should we get to the point where we say we want to continue the conversation on that, we'd have to appoint a group that's going to basically lead these conversations in the community, and have that conversation, whether.
So I think, Chief, again, maybe we do need to write that into the recommendations. That part of this is that we do need to hear from the community and various communities, right? What community policing means to them. And, I'm just going to reinforce Will's thing by just saying, I think we need to, again, it's a recommendation, right? It's a suggestion from us to actually put something in writing so that it's memorialized in what goes to the city council.
Let's just do it the right way and get it done.
Yeah. And to one point, I just wanted to finish this. I was planning on bringing what I'm going to say here in the following 2 sentences up at the end again, but to something that Reverend Grigsby had mentioned. So these are recommendations that will be submitted to the city council, but there has to be, I think, for all of these recommendations, provided they all move through and go through, there's got to be action plans around each and every one of them, correct? And I think that is what part of the ongoing work, whether it's this task force or some other task force, made up of community members. And, so I just want to, like I said, I'll bring it up again, but I mean, recommendations, we've all said it, is not the end of the work.
Agreed. Well, all right. I'm just going to throw out there. So we're going to add a recommendation that the community, that should this move forward, to consider expanding community policing or building a community policing model, something that's sustainable within the police department. Would those conversations be best to be held with or without the police department and police leadership present, or should they kick off without the police present with possibly somebody that's tasked as being the chair of this to hold these conversations and then invite the police in once they have ideas in mind framed?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
I think if possible, we should do it similar to the way we did it with the gang conversation this summer, where the police officers can come and listen to the discussion, but the community needs to have the discussion. The community needs to lead the discussion. I believe it's of the utmost importance that we empower the community to have these discussions safely and to hear what it is that they believe and what they have to say, without the interruption of the professionals or service providers. Because again, from a service provider, we always think we know what the people we're working for, what they need, until we really sit down and put ourselves in a position to listen. Because we're dealing with an evolved population, that the issues are not the same. What we see and the way we interpret might not necessarily be what other people are interpreting the problems as. So I don't think it's a situation where SPD needs to not be in it. No, you need to definitely be there and hear what the community has to say. But the power of the gang conversation that we had this summer was you guys were there and you guys were listening. You were intent on being there, being present, and allowing the discussion to develop in a sense in which the community felt as if you really cared. And I really feel like that's important.
Okay. Get the notes?
Yep.
All right. Anything else on community policing before we move on? We will add that a little bit more than what's there, but I have a lot of notes myself. We will add all of this into the recommendation on that topic, and we'll take out expand. We'll just put it community policing. Okay.
Should put develop community policing.
Develop community policing. Yep. Plan. Yep. That brings us to number 9, technology and policing. The first three recommendations are, again, things that we were doing anyways, and we're really just committing to a few of them at a public forum, where with our body-worn cameras, we're pledging to continue investing in them and to strengthen the program. We regularly add additional resources when possible, so that our public interactions can be reliably captured and made available for review. The implementation of Street Smart, we will continue to use that to communicate information internally. This helps us in our community policing model, in that officers have the ability, if they receive information that they feel needs to be going out to other officers on different shifts, they can create a bulletin or create a blog to write up what that situation is and put it on Street Smart, so that the other officers, when they start their shift, they can read about it and understand that's an ongoing problem. We've been using that. It's been difficult to really gauge the success of it because of COVID, and COVID's really it's just changed everything this year. Violent crime is up. all their Part 1 crimes seem to be on the decrease because people spend a lot of times in their houses. They're not on the street as much. We'll really get a good idea of its value once life starts going back to normal. So far, we're happy with the product. It's taken a little bit longer for us to populate on the map the crimes so we could use it effectively. That's more of a software problem with our CAD RMS platform than the problem with Street Smart, but we're getting there. COVID didn't help with the implementation either. It limited travel time for a lot of people. Esri is a system that the city purchased, I believe, a couple of years ago. It was before we went with Street Smart. Our analyst, Matt Douglas, and his colleague at City Hall, Heather Ipson, have done a very tremendous job building out that platform in consultation really with John Coluccio's office, where we're hoping very soon to be able to share with the public on this platform our Part 1 crimes so that you can pull up a map and see what kind of crimes are occurring in your neighborhood. And the long-term goal is to link other city data with police data on this platform. This is the platform when I speak about transparency and possibly sharing other data that we have, like use of force data. This is the platform that we would be building it upon. Again, this isn't something that's going to happen tomorrow. It's been a 2-year work, and it was explained to us that when we started building it out, it was going to be a while, but we're getting close. We're getting very close. We're not ready to launch it in the public eye yet, but it's looking good on our end. So we're excited about that. The last one, the Stop Reporting Safety Net Mobile Racial Profiling Data Collection System. Through this conversation and some research done by Lieutenant McLaughlin in our research and development unit, he was able to find out that there's a built within our CAD system, and we had to call and have it activated and implemented, is a system that will allow us to capture racial profile data on proactive stops such as traffic stops and street interdictions. So this is I believe, I don't know if Lieutenant McLaughlin's on the call. I believe he's got it implemented it in a beta stage right now, where he's going to start testing it to see how it works. And once we determine that this is something that not only works for us, but it works in a capacity that we're happy with, we are going to add that to our policies and make it used immediately as soon as we can. And this is going to give us the ability to really capture that data, as was suggested in the Finn report. That was one of the gaps that they recognized that we needed to try to close.
Chief, do you mind if I jump in on that? It's Lieutenant McLaughlin.
Oh, go ahead, Lieutenant.
So yes, you hit the nail on the head there. We were able to speak with our CAD and RMS vendor to locate the module. The module has been moved into the test side for us, and I did actively start working on it today, in pretending as if you were that I was on those proactive stops to see what it would prompt the officer for. We do have the ability to customize the responses that the officer can choose, and to obviously mandate what fields and what type of stops. So it does look like it is something that we're going to be able to implement. There are a couple things that we're going to have to put in, because it was originally designed for California agency years ago. So it is going to require a little bit of customization, but it is something that we're probably going to become familiar with very quickly.
Thank you, Lieutenant. And I do have to give Lieutenant credit for this. As he mentioned, this isn't something that was marketed to us by this company. It's something that he, through his research, found existed, and made the phone calls to the company in California, and found out that yes, they could actually activate it for us. So he's doing a lot of the back end work on that. So I'm excited to see what that looks like. I haven't even had a chance to look at it. It's that recent. and we will certainly try to share that more on that as we get it. Maybe we'll have an update next Wednesday, hopefully, if we can. Any questions on any of this? Okay. If no questions, the last topic is the Civilian Police Review Board. So at the beginning of this collaboration, it was discussed whether we would add Civilian Police Review Board to this collaboration, recognizing that Civilian Police Review Board is independent of the police department and they report directly to the city council. It was decided that the city council would take up this topic, and I don't want to speak for Councilwoman Porterfield because she did take up the effort with the city council, but I will say that from our end and for the recommendation end that we are recommending and committing to supporting the work done by the Civilian Police Review Board and working closely with them in every manner. And we are adding the additional recommendation that we work closely with them on education and outreach in the community. This is something that admittedly we don't do at all, and we need to. It's in the legislation currently, and we will work with CPRB leadership moving forward to hopefully meet the expectations of letter A through F. And Councilwoman Porterfield, would you have anything you wanted to add on that?
Yeah, thanks, Chief. So, on background, I think all of you know that the City Council has been for weeks been discussing the Chapter 93, which governs the Civilian Police Review Board. And most of our recommendations are not around about the outreach so much, which it looks like this is, which is definitely an important part of it, but actually how the board governs itself and what the board is able to see and able to review and the specifics of Chapter 93. So at this point in time, we have recommended some changes to the current legislation. We're going to be calling for a public hearing on that. And that'll happen this Monday. We'll call for the public hearing, and the public hearing will be in a couple of weeks. In terms of the outreach, I do think that's extremely important because there are many people who don't know that it actually exists. So one thing I would like to, I don't see it in here, and I don't know if the police department is still doing it, is the Civilian Police Academy, which I attended like many years ago. So I don't know if that's something that's still being done, but I personally found it helpful to be able to see it from not 100% from the lens of the police, but it certainly was helpful to do that, to do a ride along, which in the back of the car did not work for me. Let me just say that. So, and also to be able to go to the to the shooting range. So if that's not something that's currently being offered, I would recommend that we put that back. It just seemed to go a long way. And it wasn't that I took it because I was any part of any specific group, but it was offered to neighborhood associations, and there were members who were interested and wanted to attend. So I think that's something that could be added to this, the civilian police outreach. So other than that, people, I don't want to talk a lot about what the city council's recommended because that's all coming out, and you'll have an opportunity to take a look at it, and also to give your input in the public hearing. So that's all I have to say about Chapter 93 as it relates to the CPRB.
Say something?
Sure.
Chief,
it's Karen ZW.
Oh, sorry, I was.
I was just going to comment that the public hearing for that is Monday.
No, we're calling for the public hearing on Monday.
I believe that we already. I think the public hearing is Monday, but
no, you have to call for it before you can have it, because people won't have the information. So for the CPRB chapter,
talking about two different things.
I'm talking about for Chapter 93 CPRB, where we just in our meeting on Monday.
The public
we're
hearing
calling
then,
for it.
and this collaborative is going to be Monday night.
Right. The collaborative hearing is on Monday night. The call for the CPRB Chapter 93, we're calling for that on this coming Monday.
Okay, I misunderstood also. I thought that this Monday was CPRB. But I just want to also add that this was one of the parts of Chapter 93 that I was concerned about, because I don't really think that the Civilian Police Review Board has necessarily been fulfilling its outreach and education role, which is one of the roles that is in Chapter 93. So I really appreciate this recommendation. I think that it is a valuable way for the community to learn more, not only about the process of using the Civilian Police Review Board, but just also in terms of, you know, helping to bring more attention to how the police department is functioning. So I think this is a really important role for the CPRB. So I just wanted to comment on that too. And I apologize. I thought the public hearing Monday was also for the Civilian Police Review Board. Thank you.
Any other comments on this? Okay. That covers everything that we have in here. Does anybody have anything that they would like to bring up that that I have not covered as it relates to this report?
So Chief, just a couple of things. One general comment is, for everything concerning training, it would be good if there was some progress report that was given to the public, whether it's a number of people trained, number of officers trained, etc. Just some update that periodically goes out about the status of that, the type of training, number of people. So hopefully that was an easy comment. I'll pause, give someone else a chance to talk, and then there was a couple other things I had.
Just to follow up on that, Genghis, what would you like to see in those regards? Like, what do you envision seeing? Is it just an update of what training officers get? Like by title?
Yeah, like maybe the percentage of the department that has gone through it since date 1 to date 2, that kind of thing, right? Just
She's almost training every week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're talking specifically to like from able to community.
No, I'm
engagement
talking about a
type-
specific. There were several training topics that were mentioned in the recommendations.
Okay.
And so as we begin to roll those out or expand them or roll them out at a higher frequency, just maybe whatever frequency makes sense, once a quarter or something else, of, you know, an article in the paper or an issue of some kind of statement that just says, here's what our, you know, our progress has been in our trainings.
Okay.
Genghis, I think that's good, but it's to really tell the story is talk about all the training that's ongoing, and it's, I'll say it's weekly, where officers update things, are given new sections of learning, and that really tells the story.
Mayor McCarthy, right? And so all I'm saying is that, I mean, look at it from the perspective of it's a positive communication from the police department to the community.
Yes. Yep.
Right, of what it is. So whatever frequency, whatever, right? I mean, I don't intend this to be something that's burdensome. What I intend by this is to give the community a pulse that the training objectives, the diversity in that training, I don't mean their diversity, but the variation in that training from subject to subject, from numbers of officers, types of officers, that stuff is going on, it's happening. And so at whatever frequency makes sense, it's more you know, it's again an indication to the community that the core fundamental education of the police department is progressing.
Chief Sieber, I correct with some of the software looking to buy that might be a fairly simple task.
No, it will be eventually, and that's kind of why I asked the question. You were first off, you were kind of talking about just what we're proposing to the city council, which is obviously easily done. Just to show progress as we're making in this recommendations. But what the bigger picture would be show ongoing training, as the mayor just said, we have weekly trainings, we have monthly bulletins we put out. Yeah, we can do it. We can do it. It'll, especially with some of the software we just recently purchased, benchmark unit, that we can track it and put out some kind of report towards the end. So it's doable.
Carissa, can you,
Thank you.
go de-escalation piece?
And to just to circle back to what Councilwoman Porterfield said about the civilian police academy, under the de-escalation recommendation, and this is my bad for not bringing it up when I went through it. Bear with the computer while it's catching up. There is a recommendation in here that our training department be expanded with justification of why. And it is included that the civilian police academy, training the civilian police review board, training for neighborhood associations, neighborhood watch, and various other groups. Right there, yeah, right at the bottom. Scroll up. The bottom of the gray box. Continued training and recertification.
So is this specific? I mean, doesn't specifically, because I didn't see that. I saw this, but I didn't see the specifically Civilian Police Academy. So is that being done right now as it was being done before? And are we going to be very specific in making sure that it has a name and not just kind of various trainings, but is it going to happen with a name, a structured? And I think Reverend Grigsby said in the chat, which I agree with, that it be offered not just to CPRB members, but others who would want to take it. And also there's some talk about actually having like a ROT, something similar to an ROTC. So also training could be, that particular experience could be provided to young people as well.
To answer your question is it's not currently offered right now. We would like to offer it. It's just it's one of these things that is a resource drain on us. We currently only have one trainer. In the past, we had up to 3 trainers in that department. And also, we also rely on our Office of Professional Standards, which at one point had 3 officers in it. Now we only have 2. And you have to understand that while the individual units have been decreased from a personnel perspective, their workload has been increased with all of the additional oversight we are putting on our officers. So when, this is where it comes down to, and, I hate to sound like a broken record by saying we need more officers to do these things, but that's the reality, is that as, we have a certain number of people working here, and as we're asked to do other things, something's got to give. And what we found is that as we're answering more mental health calls and domestic calls, we're doing less community policing. And as we're doing more oversight, more review of forms, and more reviewing of videos, we have less time to hold civilian police academies and do training. So certainly these are things that we want to do. It's just a matter of getting the resources to do them. And then, of course, we find value in them. Certain things that we're talking about have been done in the past, and others are definitely new. But I'm in agreement in everything that was just said.
Yeah, and so just the thought that perhaps we could bring retired officers back as consultants just to do the training. That's done in a lot of places where people retire from whatever it is, and then they come back as consultants. So they have the expertise. And so, they could provide that. So that's just a thought. And I know everything takes money. And the other thing I wanted to just ask is there a way for me to see what the cultural training that's done in the academy looks like, what that particular curriculum looks like? I'd like to be able to just to have some visual understanding of that.
Sergeant Daring, is that something that you could do?
I'm sure we still on.
Yeah, still.
Yeah, Councilmember Porterfield will look into that. Yes, short answer, I believe yes. I don't think they have any protection measures that Zone 5 would care about, but it's just, we'll get you an answer very soon. I also want to just say, I think I facilitated your civilian police academy. I think I have pictures somewhere of you on the range, so I'll dig those out as well.
Is there a request
Okay.
that, you know, I know I'm bringing up something that I wasn't planning on, but is the request that Councilman Porterfield made about seeing that training, is it only she or the council persons who'll be able to see it, or can that something be that can be the task force can be informed about?
If it's open, I mean, we can give it to everybody. We just kind of sit here. Person, I'd have to check with Zone 5 and make sure they have no problem with it, giving up their.
Okay,
you know,
if
their
it were, I think that would be a good thing, considering we've got some good cultural diversity on this task force.
We also just go back to police academy. We tried to conduct a virtual learning, a civilian police academy. I had one of the sergeants put something together recently. It didn't come out as pretty as we had hoped for, so we kind of need a better producer other than me to produce it. But that's another thought that we've had here is to do one so virtually people, you know, I personally think one of the problems is people don't know their police department. They don't know how many changes have been made over the years. They don't know how many steps we've taken, and it was kind of, I hate to say propaganda, but to sell ourselves to a wider world. When Councilmember Porterfield took the training, I believe probably only 16, 18 people in that class, because that's all you can really manage for ride-alongs and so forth. So it's limited on what you can put out there. If we do offer it again, I would suggest that we start with this group right here, going through it first.
Yeah, and you know, and this isn't chief. Look, it's what I was saying before with communicating the training. The department's publicity is in the hands of the department. Okay? And so I understand the resource issue in terms of putting it together, but at the end of the day, right, the department's got to be proactive in communicating out those things.
Absolutely, because people hear about the things that don't go well. So it's, you know, incumbent upon, you know, the police department and the city of Schenectady, our own part of that, to market our police department for the positive things that are being done as well, because there needs to be that level of balance.
Well, generally we were shy and bashful. That's why we didn't do it, but we'll get better at it.
I'm sure that's what it is, especially you.
Actually,
I'm shy and bashful too.
I want to third that. I want to second and third that, because before I got on council, I actually had the opportunity to hear the chief talk about a lot of the changes that have happened over the last several years at two different presentations to two different groups that I belong to, and it was really informative, and I learned a lot about the changes that have been underway in the department. And I guess I would also turn to the steering committee at that point and say, you know, just like I happen to be a member of two organizations that he came and spoke to. I'm sure you all are part of organizations that could also invite, you know, someone in to, whether it be the chief or our shy assistant chief or someone else that could come in and talk about all this to the groups that you all are members of as well. Because I think that's a great idea. I also just wanted to say, I thought I saw the youth component in the report, but I can't find it in going back. So might be worth putting that in as well. The idea of going back into the schools and doing some sort of, I think Ms. Porterfield said like a ROTC model, but I don't think that's, you know, I don't know if that's the right word, but I don't see it written in the report, but I definitely had read it someplace, but so I'd like to see that added also.
Yeah, I'll double check that. Yeah, I really like the ROTC model of I like it at the college level for becoming a police officer. At the high school level, we do have a criminal justice club that's being run by a couple of lieutenants here. We'll make sure that we have it in this report. I'll look forward to.
If I could, I hear what you're saying, Chief, about the upper grades, but let me just tell you, as part of the community conversation, our thought was that it really needs to be at a lower level so that younger people, when they get to maybe high school or college, can already be considering that as a career that they want. Because right now we know that a lot of it's, you know, because somebody's family was a member, et cetera, and so on. And in addition to that, we know that in communities of color, especially African American communities, there's this thought of not wanting to be a police officer because of what we're talking about here and what the interactions have been within the community. So I think we should really give consideration to starting that as a lower grade, if at all possible. Because by the time kids get to high school, pretty much their minds are made up what they're going to do.
Yeah, no, I definitely understand what you're saying, and I think you're exactly right. I like the high school ROTC, and I don't know if Dr. Mono is on, but I would love to see it where they could possibly get credits toward a degree in criminal justice at the college level. And then my idea and thought is at the college level, if there was an ROTC program similar to what the Army has, where if you went through it at the college level, your senior year, you would go through a police academy. And then when you graduated from the college with your bachelor's degree, you would be a certified police officer that any police department, I actually think that you should be rewarded and put to the top of the civil service list and be able to choose the police department you want to go to. There should be a reward attached to it. But the mayor and I have had discussions with this, and this is part of our civil service recommendations at a bigger level that we could talk about it a lot, but it's almost like you have to have a lot of people to convince on that end. But I like the idea of from the school level, and if we could work closely with our local colleges, maybe it's something that we could, at least at that level, help out with for recruiting.
We also years ago ran a junior police academy, council member Porterfield, I don't know if you remember that, but we ran 9 to 1, 5 days a week during the summertime for a couple of weeks, 2 different segment sessions, and that was very successful as well. That was geared more towards, I think, 14 to 16-year-olds. We didn't let them shoot guns though.
That's good. So, and even if we're doing summer programs, which we may not be doing, it may be something we could just do. I know that we have limited resources, but even during summer programs, it's something like our summer youth, the SJTA program. It's maybe something we could add as a component to that. Right now, the youth go to various places to learn, and then on Fridays, they come to an educational piece, and maybe we could do something in there. Just thoughts that, maybe to facilitate it without trying to create more need for resources.
If I might add to that, I just wanted to call attention to go back to diversity, which we're dealing with now. Comments I made in the chat yesterday about, all the recommendations I thought were good. I just wanted to add a couple to them. They were short conversations, so I don't know if, Chief, you noticed those or are things that could be included from yesterday?
You'll have to remind me, Reverend.
I was hoping not to recall them again in the interest of time. Part of it was seconding your work on civil service. It's always been a tough nut to crack. But specifically what conversation has been over the years, it's had mixed reviews, and so it needs to be thought through. But it always seemed to me that adding additional educational components limited the pool, even though you want a better educated group, that's the trade-off. But allowing people to finish whatever education there is, allowing them to finish it while they're being officers. So allowing it, instead of in the old days, maybe it's still true, maybe it's not, you had to have a degree before you could take the test. And so that limited the pool because given the age requirement, unless you want to change that, which is kind of mixed reviews too, but with most people, they're only going to take the test 2 or 3 times possibly by the time they age out. The other more controversial area was making provisional appointments. If you make provisional appointments, you take a chance that someone will do well on the test, but it's a way to select people and bring them in and therefore add diversity through that means. I think that was, as well as adding the word retention, because it's as critical not only to get people in the door, but make sure they don't leave by the back door. And so I think you were willing to add retention as well, but those were a couple things on diversity. Adding to diversity is challenging. It's often that the efforts are not tried and found wanting, but tried and found difficult. And so it does require a much long haul strategy, which you've laid the groundwork for in there. But I just added those couple different ideas.
Yes, I do remember seeing those. I agree with every single one of them, Reverend. And I think that they, along with our civil service request, would be perfect. Ideally, you lower the requirements to take the test, but then we have to have the ability to look at as many people as we can up front. Because I think one of the things that happened was by lowering the requirements, we ended up getting people scoring high enough on the test that once we canvassed them and something came up where they did not continue on, we got to a point where we couldn't move past them. Am I correct on that? So that rule of 3 is really the big hindrance. So
Oh,
the
yeah.
rule of 10 or a pass fail, it would definitely help us. And we are using this new Guardian technology, wanting to really take a better look at the candidate, not just their education, not just their test score, but we want to get a really good, better look at candidates to really decide whether they would fit well into the community. You might be the most educated person in the world and not fit into this community, or you might be the least educated person and might fit perfectly into this community. So,
And just another problem we ran into 3, 4, 5 years ago. We did actually for a couple of test cycles. We went to Albany, we went to Union College, went to some of these 4-year colleges in the area and tried to recruit. They had different recruitment drives and stuff. What we found is most students couldn't take the test because even though they went to school in the Capital District, they didn't live in the Capital District. And we actually kind of, at the time, went to civil service and allowed them to use their college addresses. And they wouldn't allow it because it's not their primary address. But I'm just using that as an example of some of the roadblocks that we have. We did all this recruitment in hopes that, again, to get a better educated, individual and so forth, and to make it police, department known. And I think we were successful in that, but a lot of them couldn't sign up for the test, which we didn't know ahead of time.
That's certainly another barrier. It's just that education itself may be useful, but not sufficient always for a good officer. So it really, it's a challenging field.
Yep. I just say that because we were just trying to tap into the colleges. Wasn't saying that.
Sure, yeah.
I'm the least educated guy here. I think I'm the smartest.
Definitely the shyest.
We'll put that out for a vote.
Oh, now we're voting.
pretty sure there's a consensus.
There's a consensus, right?
First time we had a consensus all day.
All right. Anybody else have anything that they wanted to add? It's 3:22. I know everybody blocked off till 4. I don't think there's gonna be anybody complaining if we can wrap it up a little early on a Friday, but I don't want to exclude anybody. Please feel free to mention anything.
I just want to offer thanks and invite us to just acknowledge that we just did a thing. You all have been working really, really hard writing and editing and we've been reading and meeting and having hard conversations, and it's worth just taking a deep breath. And it was nice to laugh just a minute ago, and I'll be laughing at the same thing. So
you mean
thanks.
I get that a lot. That's
Yes, there we go.
Jeez, I should have brought up sooner.
Actually, Reverend Gardner beat me to that, but I was going to say thank you as well to Carissa, the chief, all of the officers, but also to the committee. I mean, this has been a lot of time that you all volunteered to devote to this really important topic in terms of what it will do for our community and our city. And I think, just reading the newspapers and seeing all the other communities as they've been moving through this process, I just feel like our process has been, and when I say our, I mean you, your process has been so thorough and so inclusive of so many different community groups, and just hearing from all these various constituencies in our community has been such a great, listening to folks and learning. And I think that we really, you guys really did a great job at that. So I just wanted to add my thanks into all of you as well. Thank you.
Chief, this is John Murubian.
Hi, John.
Hi. Just a follow-up this one with regards to Reverend Grisby and your conversation regarding new recruits and lowering the bar. Was that done before? Or is that something that you were just talking about or looking at? for the future.
What I was talking about was at least looking at the question, because I forget how many years ago it was put in that at least a 2-year degree was required. I was at least trying to advocate for if that requirement is kept, allow the person to take the test and to work on that requirement while they're in process, so it doesn't rule them out from taking the test. It's also worth having a conversation, the pros and cons of having that 2-year requirement.
Yeah, if I can just.
And our requirements are not a 2-year degree, they're 60 credit hours, I think, 30 credit hours, so it's,
30.
That was talked about, and then it was lowered from the initial goal, and,
The goal is 60 at one point, to raise it
Yeah,
up to
to-
eventually.
Yeah, I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, and the reason why I brought it up in the Shin report on the community outreach, it was mentioned when we were out in the community to look at that as a probational hire, but then look at the 30 credits within a period of time. Chief, would you be able to address anything on that?
Well, mostly I was trying to stress the importance of, to do affirmative action, do diversity building, what you got to do basically is broaden the pool somehow. And you broaden the pool by doing whatever you can to get as many people to take the test. And so you don't want to put you want to limit the things that keep you from taking the test. In the past, the education requirement, and I appreciate the update on it, has been a barrier for people taking the test. And so trying to say, if you have the education requirement, somebody can take the test if they have 0 hours, but then during the X period of time, whatever you decide, they could, get those hours in place while they're training to be an officer or while they're in office.
Yeah, and if I could just add that, there's so much going on with recruiting and hiring. We may have a goal of wanting to diversify the department, and what the Reverend just said is true, that you want to have the biggest pool as you can if you want to create diversity. But at the same time, what we heard a lot about from the community is we want police officers that are from this community, that want to live in this community, that are part of this community. And by opening up the test to a county-wide level, to people that live in the counties adjacent to this county, many times we have to stop, or we can't look at any more candidates because we have 3 candidates that live in Clifton Park, Rensselaer, or maybe not Rensselaer, but Albany, and and in Amsterdam, that either we can't get past because they don't meet our criteria, or we just maybe not want to hire them for some reason. So it's a struggle for us to be able to meet both ends of what we're trying to accomplish here, which is hire within this community, but also expand our pool the best way possible to be reflective of it. So it's a challenge that we have, and we keep trying to wrap our heads around the best solution. And these are all good ideas.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, by broadening, to be a little more specific, you're absolutely right. You don't want to broaden to the point where you have 300 people taking a test. It's a fine line to walk, because you want to broaden it by doing outreach into communities that you really want to get there. And you need to broaden the pool that way, so you have a more diverse pool taking the test, as long as you have the test system. If you can change the test system somehow, if you can get past the top 3 candidates, which is a state civil service thing, but as long as you have a test system, then you need to get more diverse candidates in that pool, and somehow broaden it by having diversity, not by having 500 people take the test. So I agree. I mean, I wasn't clear on that, but what I meant was, and that's really the challenge, how you do that, how you walk that line, how you make that happen. That's why it's a challenging field.
Will Rivas has his hand up.
Yeah, I would gladly say that going into this process, I really had very little expectations as far as what we would be able to do. I will say there were several points in this journey in which there were some great conversations. I was thankful to see all of us brought into the conversation. I was thankful to see, the city council, the community members, the professionals. At times, though, it was also kind of disheartening to see that, throughout the process, sometimes we were unable to allow ourselves to remove our own lenses and to really have dig into a conversation. Genghis, I believe, I thank Genghis because throughout a lot of this process, he was not really a voice of reason, but he was able to make sense of some things I may not have personally understood. And I think, the challenge really for everybody is just to remember when we enter these spaces, when we talk about change and we talk about the community, it's important that, we walk in with no agendas and we just make sure to put the work forward. I'm happy that we were able to enjoy a laugh towards the end of this. I'm very hopeful in how this process plays out. I don't believe, this document to be the one that will change everything. I still think there's a ton of work that we, and I say we, that we all can do. And I'm committed to that work, so I'm thankful, that we were able to go along this journey. I think it was very thoughtful, and I appreciate you guys. So, it was tough, but it was an emotional roller coaster. This was tough.
Thank you, Will, for your comments. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you, Will. We appreciate it. Anybody else?
Chief, in terms of the final documentation for us to attach to our package this afternoon to the public, if I were to add a timeline to that, when can we expect that? Because we are waiting on it.
Where are we with the updates?
We can have that, Council President, we can have that to you by close of business today.
Yeah, okay. No, I was asking because we need to get it to Sam so that she's not sitting in the office there waiting to attach all the documents to the backup.
The report as it sits right now, all we have to do is add to it what we discussed on this call, and then we can get it right over there. So, there's what we will do is we will look to see from a recommendation perspective what needs to be updated, and then everything else we will get this document over. Everything else we will add from a suggestions perspective. We'll do our best to get it wrapped up and over as soon as we can. I don't think there's that much to do. We could probably, once we end the meeting, we could probably have it done in 15 minutes and get this document over, this 28-page document over, and I believe all the attachments will be either provided with it or online, where we will direct where they are online for the larger documents.
Yep, and the mayor's office will put out a press release later today indicating that the report has gone to the city council and the public hearing on Monday.
So Chief, just to be clear, in terms of, I know that this document will be included, and so will there also be a kind of direction for people to look at the Fin report as well? Because I don't know that you'll be attaching that entire document. So where you said that we'll direct people to look, is that one of the things that will be something that people can look on it online as they prepare for the public hearing?
Yes. Yeah, I believe for sake of emailing it, we're going to try to keep the document in a decent size. But if it could be put online with a link, that's what we will do for the larger documents.
And let me just take this opportunity to also offer my thanks to everyone who's been a part of this process. And, I'm hopeful that we're moving in the right direction and going to see some really positive changes. And I'm really looking forward to this, even though April 1st is coming and then we have to get our recommendations in, that isn't the end of what we do as we move forward, that this continues work we continue to do in our community. And I'm glad to be a part of it. And as Will said, sometimes it was challenging and difficult, but overall, I feel voices were heard. And when I got on today, I was glad to see that the particular language about hogtie was included, because that was something that been said for a very long time. And maybe that was implied. Sometimes you just have to speak it to exactly what it is. So thank you for, taking into consideration the voices that were being, that people were saying, we really need to have this. And that we're working together to make sure that we have the best police department and also the best relationship between the community and the police. Because I believe at the end of the day, that's what we all want. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank everybody too for your input. This has been a very educational process, and while it's been trying, I have enjoyed it. I think it's been valuable time that we've put into this, and we're not over. We're not done. We're going to meet next Wednesday and talk about the public hearing, and we're going to continue this process in some form. But I do appreciate everybody's time up to this point, your flexibility with your schedules to go over today from what we probably should have done. And I do appreciate everybody on this panel right now.
And I want to thank everyone for their time, effort. I think it's a process that we can all take some pride in. Look forward to the public hearing on Monday, and everyone enjoy the rest of your day and stay safe.
Thank you all. Thanks, everyone.
Two.